Have you ever walked into a room and within seconds you just knew something was off? Nobody said anything, no obvious signs, no visible conflict, but you could feel it. The tension, the shift in energy, the unspoken discomfort hiding behind normal conversations, and somehow you knew exactly who was upset, who was pretending, and who was about to snap. Most people would call that a gift, something rare, something powerful. But what if I told you it didn't come from talent? It came from survival, because there's a difference between being observant and being conditioned to notice everything. Psychologists and behavioral experts are now studying something deeply unsettling. When a person grows up in an unpredictable, emotionally intense, or high-stress environment, their brain doesn't just cope, it adapts. It rewires itself, not to make life easier, but to make survival possible. It becomes faster, sharper, hyper-aware, always scanning, always predicting, always preparing. This phenomenon is often referred to as traumatic intelligence. And here's the uncomfortable truth. The same traits people admire in you today, your emotional depth, your awareness, your maturity, might actually be the result of a past where you didn't have the luxury of being careless. So today, we're going to break this down, not from a surface level, but from the inside. 7 signs that your intelligence, your empathy, and your strength were not simply developed, they were forced. 1. You don't just walk into rooms, you assess them. When most people enter a room, they look for comfort, friends, familiar faces, something that feels easy. But your brain does something very different. Before you even realize it, it scans who's tense, who's quiet, who's dominating, who's holding something back. You notice the smallest details, a forced smile, a slight pause before someone answers, a quick glance between two people that nobody else catches, and you don't sit there analyzing it consciously. It's instant, automatic, almost like your brain is running a background program you can't turn off, because at some point in your life, being unaware had consequences. Maybe it led to conflict. Maybe it led to emotional pain. Maybe it made you feel unsafe. So your brain adapted. It said, never be caught off guard again. And now, you don't just read rooms, you calculate them. 2. You are at your best when everything is falling apart. Let's flip the situation. A crisis happens. Something goes wrong. Unexpectedly. Suddenly. Most people panic. They freeze. They get overwhelmed. They lose control. But you become calm, not a little calm, unnaturally calm. Your thinking sharpens, your focus locks in, your emotions step aside, and you start solving, step by step, problem by problem. It's almost like this is where you belong, and that's the part nobody talks about, because while others see strength, you know the truth. Chaos feels familiar. It feels like home. And here's the contradiction that defines this trait. You can handle the worst situations with precision. But when life is peaceful, when nothing is wrong, when everything is quiet, you feel uncomfortable, restless, anxious, like something is about to go wrong, even when it isn't. 3. You don't forget how people made you feel. Most people remember conversations. You remember experiences, not just what was said, but how it was said, the tone, the hesitation, the emotion behind it. You remember the exact moment someone's energy changed. Even in small things, a different texting style, a shorter reply, a missing emoji. To others, it's nothing. To you, it's a signal. Because your brain learned something very early. Words can lie, but behavior rarely does. So instead of trusting what people say, you learn to trust what they show. And now you carry that awareness everywhere. It helps you understand people deeply, but it also makes it very hard to ignore things you wish you didn't notice. Pause for a second. Be honest with yourself. When people say, you're so strong, you're so mature for your age, do you actually feel proud? Or does a part of you feel tired? 4. You over-explain yourself, even when you don't need to. Simple question, simple answer. But that's not how your brain works. You explain, then you clarify, then you add context, then you double-check if the other person understood. Because somewhere in your past, being misunderstood wasn't harmless. It caused problems, arguments, rejection, punishment, distance. So your brain created a rule: if I explain everything perfectly, I can prevent conflict. But here's the reality. No amount of explanation can control how someone chooses to interpret you, and yet you still try. Every time. 5. Your mind constantly prepares for what could go wrong. You don't just think about the present, you think ahead, way ahead. Your brain runs scenarios like simulations. What if this fails? What if they leave? What if something goes wrong? You build backup plans. Then backups for those plans. Not because you're negative, but because you've experienced what happens when you're not prepared. Unexpected pain, unexpected loss, unexpected chaos. And your mind decided, never again, so now. You predict, you prepare, you protect. But sometimes, you also exhaust yourself by living in problems that haven't even happened yet. 6. You absorb emotions that aren't even yours. You don't just notice emotions, you take them in. Someone walks into the room upset, and suddenly, your mood shifts. Someone is stressed, and you start feeling it too. Without realizing it, you adjust yourself to match the emotional environment around you. You become what the situation needs: calm, understanding, careful, because at some point, you had to manage other people's emotions to maintain stability. But there's a hidden cost to this. When you spend so much time tuning into others, you slowly lose connection with yourself. And when you're finally alone, there's a strange question that shows up. What do I actually feel? 7. Doing nothing feels uncomfortable, almost wrong. You finally get time to rest. No responsibilities, no pressure, no problems. Everything is quiet. And instead of feeling relaxed, you feel uneasy. Your mind starts racing. Old memories surface, random worries appear. Thoughts you've been avoiding suddenly get louder. So what do? You distract yourself. You stay busy. You look for something, anything, to focus on, because stillness feels unfamiliar, and unfamiliar feels unsafe. If you recognized yourself in these signs, then understand this clearly. There is nothing wrong with you. Your awareness, your intelligence, your emotional depth are real, but they were shaped by something real too. An environment that required you to grow up faster than you should have, to notice more than you should have, to handle more than you should have. You adapted. You survived. Your brain did exactly what it needed to do. But here's the part that matters now. You are not in that environment anymore. You don't have to scan every situation. You don't have to predict every outcome. You don't have to carry everyone else's emotions. You don't have to stay in survival mode, because survival is not the same as living.